Welcome back. So, we're picking up where we left off on our Pythonnet video. So at this point, we're starting to talk more about the actual controls inside of our Windows form application. And so right now we have a combo box inside of our Windows form. And then now that we have a combo box, we saw how we can add an item to it. And we also saw we can do a little bit more of an advanced functionality where we can draw a border around it. Yeah, it's a little bit time consuming in the sense of we've got to define all these different components and X, Y, Z. And, yeah, it's kind of hard, but at least we can do it. So now that we have a combo box, we want to start adding some functionality to it where, if we click a button, that combo box will be populated. And once it's populated, we can start going through the process of actually, possibly getting certain class objects from that. So there's a couple things we need to do before we actually go to that though. So what we're going to do next is we're going to define a label for our combo box, at least the label in the sense of it's going to be right above it. So that way somebody can use it and know like, oh, okay, that's what that's supposed to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this wonderful little section and I'm going to call it my define labels, my labels. Okay. So we're going to call this one our self. What did I call it? I'm going to mess up all my notes. I can tell you already. We're going to call this our library label. And so this will be system.windows.forms, and then it's going to be label. All right, so it's a new label object. That label object has some properties that we can set about it. And that one property we can set about it is a text. The text defines what we see in that label. In this case, I want it to be all uppercase, Interop libraries. Okay, so we have some text. We probably should also define some fonts. So what we're also going to do is we're going to do library label, and then we're going to do a font. Now, just like in the previous video, I think it makes a little bit more sense where if we are going to be using this font over and over again, let's maybe have it be its own little kind of separate attribute that we can call. Now, in this case, I want it to be Roboto, but I want it to be the medium one. And then on top of that, I want it to be a little bit bigger than what you see in the combo box. So in this case, I want it to be roughly about 12.5. And then from here, I'm going to go right back down to my font object, and then I'm going to say self, and then I'm going to call it label font. I hope that's the right one. Did I call it right? No. Label fonts. It's kind of sad that I can already know when I already made a mistake even by looking at it. Okay, so we have a font object. Then from here, we need to also define a location of our font. So we're going to take our library label, and then we're going to call that location property, and then we're going to do a system.drawing.point, and then we're going to specify the location. A point is defined by an X and a Y. And so we want 28 from the X, and then 60 down from the Y. 60. And then from here, you would think, oh, well, it should already be there, right? No, unfortunately not. So we need to add that to the controls. And so it actually is considered a control. And so here we're going to call it the library label. And then, oh no, it's not working. What's going on? We forgot to define something. So here, there's actually a property that we have to define about it. And so one is called the library label, dot, and then it's going to be the size property. Now, in this case, I'm going to do a system.drawing.size, and then I'm going to do self.library label, and then we're going to do the preferred width. And then I'm also going to do that same one and do the preferred height. Now, this is also a nice little way too, where again, you're seeing just different ways of defining that. So in this situation, what I decided to do was I said, okay, in this case, I do want it to be a certain size, but I just want it to be the preferred width. And then I also want it to be the preferred height. So this is just a different way of defining that, where you can make it a little bit easier on yourself when you're trying to define the size and the location of it. Why is it not working? So now you can see we have everything. Don't ask why IntelliSense is freaking out. I'm sure it's something I did wrong. Okay, so now it's gonna work, right? I don't know, it freaks out sometimes. Okay, so at this point we have a label above our combo box. Let's start thinking about what that load functionality would look like. So this is gonna be a little bit further down just because I'm kind of trying to keep the actual components different compared to the actual loading components. So, a couple different things. Let me get my notes and my little... okay. Okay. Let me bring it back up again. Okay. So I want this to be populated when this is clicked. So we're going to bind an event to this button that will populate this combo box. So even though the event is causing another object or control to change, the event is still associated with that button. So for here, we will call this one define load file button and then underscore click. Self, we're going to have a sender, so the person who sent the event, and then the arguments. And then from here, I honestly would never remember the path, so I'm just going to copy the one I have. Oh, where did I put it? There we go. So for those of you who don't know, I'll show you. If you go to this particular location, this will be where all your interrupt assemblies are. So this is basically the DLLs that you load when you create C# applications and things along that nature. So that's where all your DLLs are. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, I have a directory location. I'm going to load that directory once we get there. However, the first thing I want to do is I do want to make sure every time I click that button that I clear the existing items, and then from there, I want to populate them. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clear the existing items from the combo box. So I'm going to say self.types combo box. We're going to go to that items collection, and then we're going to call that clear method, and that will clear all the items from that collection. Then from here, what I'm going to do is I want to go to this particular directory, and I want to loop through each file in that directory. So I want to navigate here, and I want to loop through each file. So how do I do that? Well, we can use the system.io, so input output .directory object, and that directory object has a get files method that will specify all the files, or basically grab all the files from a specific location. And then what we can do is we can loop through each of those files and do something with it. So here, loop through each file in the directory. So I'm going to say for file, and then in this case, I need to go to the system.io.directory, if I can spell, directory, and then I'm going to do get files. Now, for get files, it requires a specific directory location. So I'm going to do directory location. Okay, so now we have a bunch of files and we're looping through them. In this case, what I'm going to say is I only want the DLL files. So only the DLL files. So if there's XML files, I do not want the XML files. Funny enough, this is actually where all the IntelliSense comes from. I guess in case you were curious. They don't have them for everyone, but they have them for most. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I only want the DLL files. And I'm going to say, okay, if System.io, and I'm going to say path, and there's a get extension method. I specify the file, and then I'm going to say, if the extension equals DLL, keep going. And I'm going to add that file to the combo box. I'm going to say, okay, self.types combo box. And then we're going to say items, and then we're going to do add system.io.path get file name. So I just want the file name. Oh, and it's lowercase. And then it will add it to that combo box as the selected items. Then from here, what we're going to do is we're going to say reset the selected index. So we're going to say self.types combo box. And then we're going to do the selected index property, and we're going to have that equal 0. So all this, what's going to happen is when we click that button, it's going to execute all this code, and then it's going to load it all to that combo box. So I'm now going to add another event up at the top that will do that. Now in this case, there's an event name that I can't remember off the top of my head. So many notes. It's the problem when you don't go in order. You have it, and then you're like, well, where did I put it? Ah, there it is. Yes, perfect. I need to get it. You know what I need to really invest in? Some type of mechanism where I can have like all my notes in one. If anybody knows of a good one, let me know. Okay, so we're going to do the load file button, and then we're going to do the click event plus equals self, and then we're going to do the load file button click. And you know what? I want this one to be up with the other events. Let's run it and see what we get. Okay, nothing too crazy. Oh, now we can see all of the interop libraries inside our particular combo box. So that's kind of neat. Definitely makes it a little bit more interactive. I think from here, what we can do is we pretty much have our combo box in a good spot. What we're going to do next is we're now going to define another control on our particular user form. So this next one is going to be a list box. So a list box is basically a place where you can list a bunch of items. So it's kind of like a combo box, but it's not really a combo box. So here, define the list box. And so we're going to say, we'll call it class list box. And then in this case, I want it to be a list box. And here we go again. Remembering what I called everything. Here we go. So here we need to also do the location and size. I think from here, what I'm just going to do is just do my find and replace. And then we'll call this types combo box. Then we're going to do a class list box. Okay. Couple of things we don't need here. We do not care about this. We care about the for color, so change the for color. Okay, and then we also we need the font. That's going to be fine. We'll change this. And then here we're going to change this to border style. And then this will be system dot. No, this will actually be 0. And I'll explain what that is in a second. And then we need to also change the location. So I'm going to change this to 180, 540, and then 540, 35. So everything's kind of the same. This is going to change the for color, so basically the color of the font. This is going to make it where there's no border. This is going to change the font so it matches the font that we defined up above with our wonderful class object. So it's now consistent. And then here, this obviously initializes a new class box. This defines the location of that class box. This defines the size of that class box. And again, this consumes a color object. This consumes a drawing size object, point object, and so on. Now from here, we still need to add the control. So we'll call this one, did not copy it. I guess I didn't copy it. And then this will be our class list box. So now we have a list box. It's right there, relatively small, but does a good thing for right now. And then we're also going to add another label to this particular form control. So I'm just going to change this, call this library label. And then this will be our class label. And then we want to make sure we add that control to our wonderful form. And then here, and then we'll run it and see what we get. Didn't like it. Why didn't it like it? Oh, it's because I put it right over the other one. That's why. This one's going to be 150. So now we have our interop classes, interop libraries. So hopefully you can kind of indicate what's going to be going on here if you watch my previous series. We're going to get all the class objects from a particular interop library, and we're going to display them inside of our list box. So again, it's kind of binding certain functionality to it. And then on top of it, it's kind of making it a little bit more interactive. Now, additionally, though, I do want to make sure that we put a border around our wonderful list box, because right now it's not there. So what we can do is we can actually take this draw combo box border and we can basically modify it. And so we'll call this one list box. So here we're going to do H types combo box. And this will be a class list box. Again, I only want the selection. Now, oh, no. Now, technically speaking, I have debated, I'm seeing ways I can simplify this, because right here, the first thing I'm seeing is there's obviously a huge repetition of code, in the sense of the only thing that's differing is just the object I'm painting. So what I might be doing is I'm going to see if I can simplify this. I'm not really sure how to do it just yet, but I'm going to see if I can try to simplify this where we have only one method that we can call multiple times to each one. So that's at least the goal. We'll see what happens and if that's possible or not. But for the time being, we're going to leave it just like that. And then we're going to do our class. Where's our class list box borders? So now we have a border around this one as well. Okay. Well, I think that's enough for this video. In our next video, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding some functionality that will basically take this, this to the next level. And we're going to basically parse a particular library and get just the class objects from that library. Now, the nice thing is I do have a lot of that pre-built. That's actually in this whole builder class object that I have. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on how this works, just because I do have a series that is going to be dedicated to this. But we will be using some of the functionality inside this class, inside this form object. So that's basically what we have planned in the next video. However, if you do have any questions, by all means, put them down in the comments below, and I will do my best to get back to you. Otherwise, we will see you in the next video.